Spoiler alert, this podcast will be including information regarding the most recent episode of The Wheel of Time on Amazon. Haven't seen it yet? Go watch, then come back.
Part of Double P Media, doublepmedia.com.
This is Spawn Center. Kind of a dark day for fans of Team Trolloc as the season comes to a close, and we're going to be joining Coach Trolloc once again with his closing press conference, and then we're going to be taking your calls here on Spawn Center. Let's go to the press conference now. Coach T!
All right, guys, I don't know how many times I've had to say this, but I'm going to say it again. Please call me Coach Trolloc.
Yeah, Coach Trolloc, so the season is over. How would you rate the season overall? Are you disappointed in Team Trolloc's performance this season?
Well, it's pretty clear that we didn't work very hard this season. There were a lot of mistakes that were made, some of them on my part. I didn't expect to find this kind of opposition in some of these places that we did, so that's on me, of course. However, you also have to tip our hat, especially to Lord Algamar in this last game. He really has a hell of a quarterback, and that didn't help. You know, we didn't execute through all three phases of the game. Our offense was pretty good when it started out, but, you've got to win all three phases in order to get this kind of victories that our GM, Michael Fade, demands, and, of course, the owner, the Dark One, he also demands better performance for us, and we're going to try harder next season.
What's your plans for the off-season?
Well, I'd really like to just, kick back, relax, have a couple of Camelin barbecues, get some of the people from Camelin and queue them up and eat them real good. But as you know, it never works out that way. The season never really ends for us. There's all kinds of pre-production and production and post-production, and not only that, but we've got a draft coming up. We're going to be looking at some good prospects out of USC, probably USC, yeah, and we're gonna draft them, and we're gonna go forward from here. We're gonna work twice as hard next season as we did this season.
Can you give us an injury report? Will it affect you all for next season?
We did suffer a lot of injuries this season, and some of them were season-ending injuries, of course. There is one that's kind of questionable whether he'll even be back for next season. We placed a Trolloc that fell in the ways on injured reserve, and we don't know if he'll be back next season or not, simply because Loyal never mentioned to anybody how anybody knows if it's actually an endless void that you just continue falling through or whether you pop out somewhere. And no matter what it is, I'm a stand-up guy. I'm not going to use injuries as some kind of excuse.
What about the allegations that you kicked the kicker?
I have absolutely no comment on that. I'm not going to talk about that right now. That is Bubba humor. That is not something that we will address here.
Yeah, Coach T.
Come on, guys. It's Coach Trolloc. I mean, it's not that hard to say. Coach Trolloc.
Yeah, Coach Trolloc. There's people who are questioning your leadership this season. Some are even calling for your job. What do you have to say to that?
Well, I know that in a previous press conference I said never say never, but never. Now I'm saying never say never, except maybe if USC is still looking for a coach. However, I'm going to leave all of that decisions up to, of course, our owner, the Dark One, and our general manager, Michael Fade. So address him with those questions if you want.
Coach Trolloc, I've got a source here that says that you sound like a bad impression of Ed Ogeron mixed with the dirty demon of debate. What do you say to that?
Matt? Matt with one T, what the hell are you doing here? You don't get to ask me questions. You didn't even play in the game, and we were counting on you in the ways to help us out. Get out of here. No comment to your question.
And there you have it. Coach Trolloc seeming very distracted there. he didn't seem to want to even mention the one bright spot of that final game, the capture of the Horn of Valor. Perhaps he was too distracted by the kicking the kicker question, or perhaps by the allegations of him being a bad impression of Coach Ojan, or the dirty demon of debate. But now it's time for you to discuss with us what Coach Trollock's future should be. We're taking callers right now. Our first caller is from, wait a minute, Jimmy, the Blight? Somebody calling from the Blight? All right, our first caller from the Blight. Caller, go ahead.
Hi, I'm nobody really. You can just call me T. I just wanted to say that I think Coach Trollock's done a fabulous job this season, and we shouldn't even think about firing him, especially since that USC position has been filled. I think that we need to keep him as long as we can. Maybe send him some nice Camelin People's barbecue. Yeah, thanks for taking my call. I'll hang up and listen.
Boom, boom, doo-wah-be-da, doo-wah. Boom, 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 doo-wah-be-da, doo-wah. Happy holidays. Boom, doo-wah-be-da, doo-wah. Happy holidays. Boom, doo-wah-be-da, doo-wah. Happy holidays. Boom, doo-wah-be-da, to you. Boom, doo-wah-be-da, doo-wah. Boom, 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 boom.
It is going to be a wonderful garden. Why did those magnolias come up there?
Yes, thank you. Stick all that on the front. All right.
Simon, I am so sorry, but you may have figured out that Catfish at CJGman67 on Twitter, who is now my 68th or 69th favorite CJG man on Twitter, released a statement on December 19th saying, like Matt, with one T, I've made the smart decision to abandon my crew. But if you haven't abandoned Wheel of Time, do yourself a favor and listen to this podcast. At least he was nice enough to tell you, Simon, keep listening to us even though he's not here. We've given you proof of life. That's all you need. Also, to Coach Trollock, apologies. Looks like you're going to lose your job after losing the Taco Bell, Tostitos, Tarwin's Gap Bowl. That happened in this last episode. But them's the breaks. The USC job is filled. Good luck finding your next position. Welcome to a Wheel of Time podcast, at least it is for now, called Bustin' Blockbusters, where we break down all of the big franchises. My name is Matt Murdock, and I think that you're going to want to hear from somebody besides me that's part of Double P Podcasts, and that would be a guy who grabs the one power like He-Man. I have the power, and he never lets it go after that until it fries him. It's Bubba.
Matt, I know how much you love Perrin. So just like your favorite character, Perrin, I'm going to do nothing while the Dark Ones and the Fades kill all your friends. So good to see you.
It's great to see you, too. We're going to get into rating this episode, Season 1, Episode 8, The Eye of the World. It's the Season 1 finale. We'll be talking about it in just a second. But I've been promising all season a contest.
Whoa.
And yes. And so we're going to, right up front, so that you don't have to listen to me yammer if you don't want to. I hope you will continue to listen to me yammer. But right up front, we're going to draw our contest winner.
And that winner is Nicole at NightWolfNim on Twitter. Nicole, send me a DM so that we can communicate about how I can get you your Amazon apparel, courtesy of the podcast.
Congratulations. Thank you so much, Nicole.
Yes, Nicole, great job. Thank you so much for participating. She even asked if she had done it right when she did. You can't do it wrong, Nicole. Obviously, you just won the thing, so you can't do it. You couldn't have possibly done it wrong. Speaking of doing things wrong, let's get to the ratings for this episode. Bubba, I don't know how you felt about this finale. I know that you've been kind of wishy-washy about the way the season has been kind of wishy-washy. But how did you rate this final episode of season 1, Eye of the World?
It's a really tricky rating system, Matt, and you are absolutely positively correct that this season has just been a bit bumpy, as maybe all first seasons are, especially when they want to tackle a story of this scope. When it's all said and done, I decided to give this final episode 9 what I like to call double M's out of 10.
Whoa, 9? And what are double M's, please?
Moronic Moiraine. She did
Oh.
exactly what the Dark One wanted. Now, this episode was really, really good. If there were faults in it, it was faults of the previous 7 episodes to get us to a better starting place for this. Meaning, over 7 episodes, did they really do enough with Rand's character for me to feel the weight of what he was going through? Yeah, I don't know. So often, as a non-book reader, I've heard you say things, Matt, like, oh, this didn't happen in the first book 1. This didn't happen at the beginning, didn't happen at the beginning. And there's probably a reason for it. And that reason is probably that Robert Jordan's a real good writer and knew that in this part of the story, as great as Logain is, as great as the White Tower politics are, they really don't have anything to do with this storyline. I describe it a bit like in Star Wars A New Hope, the very first Star Wars movie. We heard about Jabba the Hutt. We knew that Jabba the Hutt and Han Solo had some deals going on, right? Han owed money to Jabba. But in the original cut of the film, we didn't need to meet him. That was a problem that we would tackle later. It's literally like a 3-line thing about, hey, I got to get this money to Jabba the Hutt. They didn't spend, an episode. Of course, it was a movie, so it didn't have episodes. But they wouldn't have spent an episode explaining all this Jabba politics when it really had nothing to do with, spoiler alert, the destruction of the first Death Star. And it felt like this first season took side tangents that were interesting and could possibly really pay off in later seasons, but didn't help set up the payoff of this season. So I thought it was really strong. I thought it was exciting. There were a lot of moments in this episode where I was like, oh, hell yeah. Oh, hell yeah. And maybe the best one is when the Dark One is snapping out of existence, you see his smile. Hey, Moiraine, I love you, but you did what the Dark One wanted. We were always hearing things like, oh, we got to attack the Dark One now while he's weakest. And then it was, oh, look at this giant army. The Dark One is gaining strength. You did exactly what the Dark One wanted, Moiraine. Hey, it makes for good drama, but it doesn't look like your plan with Xuan Sansei was intelligent in any way. If anything, it looks like you helped release the Dark One rather than banishing him for good. But 9 out of 10, I think this episode in and of itself did everything it wanted to accomplish. So if the earlier parts of the season had little stumbles, I'm not going to hold it against this, what I thought was a very good episode. 9 out of 10. That's what I say.
Right. Yeah, cool. I'm glad that you really liked the finale, Bubba, because I didn't quite have the same feelings on it. So this is enough to make you want to invest in a season 2 of this show?
I was always there. This show got me real early on, and I almost want to say it got me by the second episode, where that was that great scene at the ferry where, okay, that's kind of normal ferry scene, but then the person who owned the ferry drowning and those kind of moments. I was on the show's side, and as tough as I've been on certain episodes, at the end of episode 7, I was like, give me episode 8 right now. I'm ready. Episode 8 is really good, and at the very least, it spins the story out to where you could see, oh, I see how this could be a 15-book series or a 17-book series, whatever it is. This episode, at the end of it, I really did feel the world opening up. And so I like that. I'm down.
Excellent. I love that you love this. I didn't hate this episode. There are a couple of reasons why I'm kind of conflicted about it. So I only gave it 8.1 out of 10, what I like to call quintuple Bs.
Oh, okay. Well, I know what quintuple B is, so you don't have to spend any time. Wait, you know what? Hold up. Maybe our listeners don't know what a quintuple B is. So, Matt, quintuple B?
Breathless Borderland Boys Braving the Blight. Not my favorite episode because not my favorite episode because of several episode metrics.
Episode metrics. A key one being TSWCBTBRJ, and that stands for the show watcher cheered, but the book reader jeered.
Ooh.
There they've made so many changes in this first season that it made it impossible to come back to the end of book one and make it work the same way effectively to me that the end of book one works. Now, that's not to say that Rafe's not going to take this to some wonderful places and things like that, and I'm perfectly cool with that. It's clear to me from watching some of the inside of the episodes that he very much is a fan of the books, and he's taken some of his takes from those books, which are not necessarily mainstream takes as far as the books go, from what I can see in comparison to other fans of the books. But he's kind of taken some of those takes of his own, which is his right as an artist, but he's kind of taken some of those to an extreme. And I felt like that really bogged down some of the real meat that was in the first book, and even starting into the second book. And we got glimpses of different kinds of things from that book as well. And I loved the way he put all of that together, but he took some things to such an extreme that it didn't feel very cohesive to me at the end. We can get into some more of that later. The other thing that I kind of wonder about, and again, I don't want to sound like I'm totally attacking Rafe because I respect his artistic integrity, but if you have to sit down in an interview and explain parts of the show to people after the show is aired, or right before the show is aired in anticipation that people aren't going to get it, then I feel like maybe you failed in your job of communicating what was supposed to be in the episode.
Matt, I have an idea of what you're talking about, but can you say specifically what you're referring to?
Well, I think the big fan question that came out for TV show people and book reader people alike was, what the hell happened to Loyal?
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking, because I was like, holy smokes, they just killed Loyal.
Exactly. And, I'm not going to spoil it for you TV-only people who want to know whether he actually is dead or not. If you want to find out, you can read the interviews that Rafe has done that came out post the episode airing. I feel like there were several other things that he felt he explained in this particular CBR interview that I read that I didn't feel like would have come across to a show-only person, to a book person. I think that some of it might have, but it just feels like a great idea and poor execution to me. So that's mainly the reason why I didn't want to go any higher than an 8.1, which I believe is like my second lowest rating of the season.
Are you like devastated? Like, are you hurt that the show hasn't lived up to the love?
No, I'm not devastated by it.
Okay,
I'm
good.
disappointed. Nonetheless, again, folks, if you know, and Bubba is well aware, I can't rate anything below a 7. So they're all, if I'm watching it, it's going to be good just because I'm a sap and I get into the emotion of it all. And I felt some of that was very good in this particular episode as well. And I guess that's, as far as I go, that's what I think about it. Folks, again, we're just a couple of guys talking into a couple of mics, and you don't have to use a mic. You can simply tweet to @Blockbuster on Twitter in order to tell us what you thought of this particular episode. I will be doing a feedback and book reader podcast. I'll do it hybrid. I'll do the feedback for everybody, and then I'll go branch off into a book reader only section that you can turn off if you don't want to be spoiled later on. So I still want to hear what your thoughts were about this episode or this particular podcast that we're doing. But tweet those thoughts to @BusBlockbuster on Twitter, or to @theword_double, the letters PHQ on Twitter. You can send emails to mattsaudioblog@gmail.com, mattsaudioblog@gmail.com, or you can go to mattsaudioblog.com, same spelling, in order to find a contact form there. Don't forget the Facebook page that Double PHQ also has, where people comment on different shows that we're covering. That's facebook.com/theword_double, the letters PHQ. You can also find them at Double PHQ on Instagram. You can go to doublepmedia.com. That's the word double, the letter P, media.com, to find all of the great podcasts that you should have subscribed to and sent a screenshot to me of and possibly won a free t-shirt. You can find all of the podcasts that they do there, or you can find video versions of all of the podcasts at the all-important YouTube channel. It's the one thing that keeps us afloat around here. That's youtube.com/C/theword_double, the letter P, media. You can leave comments there as well, and we'll take them there. Whew. Okay, that's all the housekeeping, Bubba. We ready to get into your favorite segment?
I almost ready. I feel like even though I went 9 out of 10, I focused on kind of problems of previous episodes. So I wanted to say one more thing that I loved in this episode, and that was the shocks. It started at the beginning with, wait a minute, 3,000 years ago, it was a future world. That's a great shock. And then the shock that the Trollocs got when all the female Aes Sedai there joined together to lightening them up. That was great. There were so many great moments in this episode. So wanted to get that out before we did anything leaning towards the negative.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you loved those things because we're right back to the thing that I hate, and that's Rand.
Oh, no.
So, Bubba, do you want to go first or me? Because I've got like 3 choices here that I could pick from any one of them.
Why don't, Matt, because I have been the head scratcher of not understanding Rand hate this whole time. So why don't you go first and get it all out of the way? And then I'll guess who I think in this episode it hated Rand the most.
All right. Well, I mean, it's kind of hard for me to decide. I had 3 candidates this time around.
Give me all 3. Let's hear them.
You want to hear all 3 of them? All right.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, Joya, the baby. I mean,
yeah.
First of all, Rand is a mother murderer, and now he's a daughter destroyer. That's a double D.
Oh,
and,
no.
Or maybe a daughter denier because he wouldn't put life into this poor little girl. If I was Joya, I'd be like, what kind of a daddy are you? Second, Perrin.
Second. Who?
Yes. Perrin.
What?
Because Rand got the girl, the one that we CW'd about for a whole episode over.
Oh my
Now he has to be perfectly cool with the fact that she loves him. Mr. Dragon Reborn ran off with Moiraine, leaving them in a lurch. That's a double L. And still, he has to support Egwene. That would make me hate Rand even more.
Oh my goodness.
Of course, Perrin, he pretty much did do nothing in this entire episode. He could have said, hey, I like you too. Finally, Moiraine.
Oh, no.
Yes. She's willing to give her life for this guy. She gets her powers taken away from her because of this guy. And then he just walks off. What the heck is that? Where's the gratitude? I mean,
he should have gratitude for her screwing up and releasing the Dark One. Yeah, good. Oh, I should have so much gratitude for you, Moiraine.
She paid her price for her mistake. He hasn't. He just walked off and left them all, wandering off in the darn Blight. I hope he gets some moss on him. That's what I hope. All right, Bubba, those are the 3. Which do you think would be the worst out of those 3, or do you have another suggestion?
No, I think what hates Rand the most are cult leaders. And the reason why cult leaders would hate Rand the most is because Rand cares about people other than himself. He's the Dragon Reborn. But even when he could have, quote unquote, his dream world, he's like, but what does Egwene want? And all our famous cult leaders here in the world are like, what? You're thinking of somebody else? That's terrible. So based on Rand's selfless thoughts about his true love, Egwene, anybody who leads a cult officially hates Rand. Then that's my Rand hater of the week.
Okay, you got me there. That's pretty good. Let's get into this episode. You mentioned the 3,000 years ago kind of opening that we got. And that was where we met Luce Theron Telamon and also Latra Posai Decum, I think is how you say it, or Decume.
Sure.
I have no idea. But they're having an argument, and he's the dragon, and she wants, or I guess she's like the leader of the female Aes Sedai. She's the Tamerlane seat, is what they call her, rather than the Amerlin seat, which I guess once the men are no longer Aes Sedai, then you just drop the T. Not sure what that all means. But he wants to cage the Dark One, and then she says that if the Dark One gets exposed to that true source, he's going to end up corrupting it. You don't want to do that, Luce. You don't want to do that. And one thing that I love about this is it is the birth of the madness that men get when they channel, because he does this act, evidently, later on in his life, but we don't see it in this particular scene. Then she basically says, do this and you're going to break the world. Well, we know the world was broken. But then also says, hey, it's up to you, though. So it's like, okay,
Passive
I've made
aggressive.
my points. I'm going to just walk away. We'll pick up the piece just like a good person who supports you. We'll just let you make a mess and we'll clean up after you. Then he promises his baby that he's going to do the thing and make the world safe. And we look out the window, and yeah, it pretty much looks like a meet George Jetson. His boy Elroy. Yeah.
Well, even before we went out the window, Matt, like I wrote immediately, this looks like the future. Their clothing looked more advanced. Their household furnishings looks more advanced.
They had better jewelry.
Yeah, and so when they went out the window and we saw the flying cars, we've been promised Back to the Future 2. It was so fun. It was like, oh hell yeah. Now I went 9 out of 10, so I loved it. This is just a stylistic note, and I wonder if you and or our listeners agree. I thought that maybe because I'm doing a podcast, I was pausing this constantly because I wanted to look at the subtitles that were up on the screen and read exactly what was going on. I was like, wait a minute. Okay, who's doing what now? He's pitching what? And she's saying what? And so to really get that in, I was having to pause it and read those subtitles because scene was presented in some, lost language, I assume. Yeah. And a part of me said that as much as I love this opening scene, I wish it had been in English so I really could just concentrate on the dynamic rather than maybe it's a, first world podcaster problem. I was sitting there going, wait, he wants to do what? And she wants to do what? So that was my one note about it. But I thought this was fun for somebody like you, Matt, who podcasted about the television show Lost for so long. This is totally like a Jacob scene, which happens at the end of the series, but here it's happening in the first season. I loved it.
Yes. I was going to make that exact same parallel. It did feel very much like Jacob and the man in black at the base of the statue as they're watching the ship come in. It felt very much like that, except for the fact that there doesn't seem to be any real animosity here. Nonetheless, I agree with you totally. I thought that was a fantastic placement. Let me explain to you why. I feel like taking a precedent from, like the Dothraki when we was watching Game of Thrones, oftentimes you had to have some subtitles in that as well. But I think it was very critically important for them to put this in what they call the old tongue, simply because nobody spoke anything except that at that time, which immediately placed it in the time. You didn't even need, for book readers, you wouldn't even have needed the 3,000 years ago. You'd have seen the dragon pen, you'd have heard him speaking in the old tongue, and you'd have known immediately what this was. But I agree with you there. I think for a TV-only person, that might have been a little bit frustrating. Also, Bubba, I'm sure you noticed that ring / bracelet thing that Luz had on his left hand. And you probably noticed that Ishmael later in the episode also had that. Mm-hmm. Was it the same one? How did he get it from Luz? If it is the same one, or is it a different one? Did all of the male Aes Sedais have those? These are the kinds of questions that make it fun for me to watch this episode.
Can I say that I created the hashtag Luz screwed up? So I think it's Luz. I think, he had one job and he didn't finish that job.
Yeah.
Once again, this opening scene is doing what? It's building our anticipation for the Dark One, for confronting the Dark One. What happened to him? And it's a bit odd that this opening scene does it when really every single episode should have been doing it. Every single episode should have been building to this point. And here we have this great opening moment in this episode. And so I just think this finale would have been even stronger if we'd been constantly having hits like this to understand how important this is all along the way.
That's an excellent point. Now, I split the other two storylines up. I just basically split it up into a Faldora and into a Blight. So which would you rather tackle first, Bubba?
Well, because I would have to assume, based on everything, that the Blight is the big, it's the monumental thing. So let's stay back in the city for a bit. Let's see how things are going in Foul Dara.
All right. Well, first things first, Perrin doesn't want Egwene to follow Rand into the Blight, naturally. And then they evidently both love Rand. And there will always
why
be.
is that? But Matt, you say that with such derision in your face. Come
Well,
on.
how can you
They can both love him.
I mean, I don't know how anybody can love Rand. It just disgusts me every time.
No,
But
brother.
nonetheless, Egwene and Perrin will evidently always be all right. CW, 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 CW.
Man, you
And
got to get some help. This is the holiday season. We're gonna get you.
maybe I need an intervention. I don't know.
Right, I think so.
But the whole idea here, I guess, is the fact that, they're all pals and they all love Rand and there's nothing they can do. So here's the thing. And this is why this is another one of those things I was talking about. I will divulge this. Rafe said, and I don't remember if it was an inside the episode or if it was in an interview that I read it somewhere, but he got the impression from the books. And I had brought this up in a book reader podcast before, that it was kind of like one of my own impressions, that Perrin might have just a little bit in the way of feelings for Egwene. Okay. And I got that feeling more from when Egwene and Aram in the books kind of flirt around a little bit. And Perrin seemed a little disturbed by that. It's told kind of from his point of view, that particular chapter is. And I wondered if perhaps Rafe just got that same kind of impression that I did, except I ended up deciding that it was more like he was just being protective of her on behalf of Rand. Whereas here, Rafe took it totally the other way, and a little bit too much of an extreme to my taste throughout the course from the very first episode. I mean, if you're going to do it, run with it the whole season, and I understand that. But then for it all to just end up with, but we're all right, right? Oh yeah, we're cool. It felt a little bit too much on the nose of, well, maybe this was an experiment that failed, but that's just my feelings about that.
I think because they built it up all season long, I think you did need that scene.
Okay, that's fair.
There's also a part of me, which non-book reader guesswork coming up right here, listeners. Part of me also thinks that all these heroes, I would call them the 5 chosen ones from the 2 rivers, are going to split up.
The fellowship.
Right. I feel like all 5 of them are maybe going to split up and have unique stories. And so I also got the feeling that Rand and Egwene may not be, having many scenes together for a while. So why not clear it up so they can go on their individual adventures? I could be completely wrong on that. That the scene also had that kind of feel to me.
Nynaeve lets Lan know that there is a way to track Moiraine, right? And that she trusts him to bring Rand back. That's a big step for Nynaeve. She can't marry him because she's a wisdom, but if she becomes something else, maybe they can still have their thing, which seems even weirder because now he'll have Moiraine and her, and she'll have her and a warder that he'll be jealous of, but also love because that warder might make her smile. He all but says that he loves her in this scene, which was very dramatic for me because they've gone a lot stronger with this relationship early on and built it up really well. This is the one relationship in the series that I'm like, give me more.
Yes, I think they could have built this up even more. If we're getting these, we're all about to die, I love you proclamations. In some ways, I think they could have built this up more. But once again, this was set up over the season, so I think the scene needs to be here, and I think it works.
Excellent. Nynaeve and Egwene then listen to the wind. Now, Nynaeve's lost her touch, evidently, after touching the one power. And Egwene says that basically what she's hearing, it's kind of like Beltane, except you're listening to it through a concert PA system instead of, through your AirPods on volume 2. So it sounds like something big is coming. And my only question here, Bubba, is if Nynaeve was not using the one power listening to the wind, I guess, before, and that doesn't seem to make any sense to me because now that she's touched the one power, she can't hear that. Because why would her and Egwene, both who can channel, evidently, not have the same ability or disability in regards to this wind? Does that mean that Nynaeve's too powerful, or does it mean that she's not powerful enough anymore? These are the kinds of questions that I was asking.
That's not at all on my mind. I just thought that it feels like you do have to be in the right state, emotional, psychological, health, I think, to channel all those things. And I can understand why Nynaeve is more frazzled. And maybe that's all I took it from, is like, hey,
Okay.
I'm not in a good state right now. Egwene, tell me what the wind is saying. Okay, good.
Yeah, that's a reasonable explanation. I will accept that. As looking for reasonable explanations, Loyal, Nynaeve, Egwene, and Perrin, they come to Min's bar looking for answers. She tells them that the answers are hard to explain, but they'll happen. Don't you worry, they will happen. And then she sees Nynaeve falling to her death as her head practically explodes. Other people in the room getting stabbed or dying or bleeding out. And then the double T's sound. That's the Trolloc trumpets. And Min is one of my favorite characters. How horrible to be in that moment and then all of a sudden see half of your clientele die. Not only does it tell you that the business isn't going to be doing so well, but it also tells you that you're going to lose some friends, which is horrible for poor old Min.
True, but she said it's time to GTFO.
Yes, she does.
Dara. Bye, guys. So Min turned out okay.
Yeah.
Min wins.
Yeah, she pulled a Matt in the end. She certainly did. Lord Agomar and Lady Amalisa are briefed that thousands of Trollocs are coming. It's more than they've ever faced before. I don't know if Uno just wants to Scottish them or pirate them to death based on his accent, but he's had it with them. Plus, we find out that there are dark friends inside the walls cutting drawbridge.
Yes. Oh, wonderful payoff for all these dark friends. Oh, so good.
Yes. And then Agomar, he's decided that he's going to go to Tarwin's Gap, that big wall that looks like where they have their Helm's Deep, to defend against the Trollocs.
It's a big, beautiful wall.
Yes. And then Uno and Lord Yakota, pardon me, they are given an assignment to play Indiana Jones and dig up the Horn of Valir. Not said in so many words in this particular scene, but that's what ends up happening. Sister basically tells her brother, you fool, Tarwin's Gap isn't going to hold, man. What are you doing? Then later on, Amalisa and Agomar, she wants him to wear Daddy's armor. And if I were Agomar, I think I would have listened to her. But Agomar likes his own tailorings, and he regrets not having or not asking for help a long time beforehand from the White Tower. But now, evidently, they must sacrifice themselves and hold the city long enough so that the word can get out that the Trollocs are coming. The Trollocs are coming. But Amalisa says that she's not going to let that city fall. And boy, she does not.
No, I've seen some people say, well, boy, she should have been really placed on the other side of the wall. Like, she should have been the first line. Why do we have, the wall is good, but her power was so much better than the wall. So I don't know. I just know that this is what fantasy can do well. This is the kind of big, important battle, the final battle, or is it, that these fantasy properties do so well. And so I thought it all built up very well. I felt like I didn't really have much invested in the king and his sister and the people of Fall Dara, but even I, the non-book reader, knew, okay, this is bad. We got to take these bastards out. So I was here for it.
I agree with that. The one thing I was disappointed in is the fact that, why say that there are at least 60 fades when you're only going to show one of them on the battlefield and two of them in the complex with Pot and Vane? I think this is a clear indication that someone on that production is embezzling Bezos's Wheel of Time money. But nonetheless, that's just a nitpick. I love Uno. Uno is one of my favorites from the books.
Well, I want to jump in and say this digging up of the horn, that didn't feel set up at all. Like, to me, if I missed a line in earlier episodes where they're like, "Hey, you need to blow this horn for, when stuff hits the fan," I missed it entirely. So I
No,
could tell they were digging up something important. But
yeah.
that relic they were digging up had no, because I had no knowledge of it, I couldn't emotionally invest too much in them digging it up.
And it did. It came completely from left field, Bubba. You did not miss a thing. They decided to drop it into this episode because that particular sequence, and we can talk about it in a little bit, but that particular sequence actually happens at the beginning of book 2 and not
Oh,
at the
okay.
end of. So he did a Peter Jackson thing, and he kind of took timeline stuff, whereas the books kind of can separate it out and make each one more intense separately. He combined the two events.
If it's presented in two different books, does somebody in that second book explain, okay, stuff's going down, we need the horn? Like
Uh,
I didn't even see on screen a decision of, okay, what I just said. There was no character on screen that I could really tell say, we are screwed. Let's dig this thing up. It felt like suddenly they were doing it. So I may have missed that, but I think that's
yeah,
something that I think could have paid off, even if it is just introduced here at the final moment.
I
I felt
agree.
like I needed something like that.
I agree. I think that him just looking at Uno and Yakota and saying, you know what to do. And then them just going off, and all of a sudden they're throwing the throne off of the stage, and they're taking pics to the thing, and you're kind of like, I don't know if that was supposed to be like we're supposed to be saying, well, what are they doing? Now, as a book reader, I knew what they were doing, but I didn't expect that's where they were going to place it, so I was kind of like, oh, so that's where they hid it in the show. Okay, anyway,
I think you can pull that, oh, you know what to do, if we later see them actually do the thing. Like, okay, you know what to do. And the thing is to pull out the horn, blow the horn, and it'll wipe whomever out. It'll rescue you, or it'll do something.
right,
The
and
fact that they dug it out and it seemingly did, we didn't see it do anything, is a bit like, oh, we know what to do. Well, what to do is to dig this thing out, and the reason why we need to do it is kind of explained in like one line later on in the episode, but
right,
I don't
but
know.
yeah, but there's no setup to it at all. There is, like you said, there is the one line where they say basically what it does is it calls all of the heroes to the battle,
Right.
to the
And only the
last
dragon
battle,
can blow it. Is that correct?
and only the dragon can blow it.
Yeah.
And it's calls all the heroes to the last battle, which is fun to look at Agomar and Amalisa's mistake here, and the fact that, well, and Moraine's. Everybody thinks that this is the last battle, and of course we find out at the end of the episode that it was probably just the first. So there you go. There's your 15 books and 7 seasons of a show wrapped up right in that. But as Agomar goes to the gap, then Amalisa arranges the defenses. She asks for any woman who can channel to join her. And this is where Min also skips town. She's the smart one.
Well, she can't channel, right? Seeing the future isn't
Well, no,
channeling, is it?
that was the other question that I had, Bubba. I mean, if you can see the future, aren't you using some kind of one power to do that? I mean, I don't know. If there's only if it's the one power, it's not like she's using power 2B.
Matt, that is more thought than I put into it. I thought it meant something if you could do the one power, aka pull stuff from the heavens and then light up a bunch of Trollocs. So I didn't beat up her too much for jumping on that wagon and ski daddling.
That's fair enough. I'm just being nitpicky, as usual. But Uno and Yokota, they continue playing Indiana Jones in the throne room. Then Nynaeve wants to get out of Dodge like Min. She's the smart one. And Egwene and Perrin, they say they can't leave because they don't know where Rand and Moiraine are. Then Loyal comes in with the bad news saying, hey, sorry, you run out of choices. All the women who can channel must come to Faldar's aid. Algamar, then later on, as the Trollocs are charging, he gives one last win, one for the Gipper speech, and the Trollocs enter into the gap. We get some Helm's Deep style stuff. I love the Trollocs. They're such playful creatures. I love them. They're playing Pyramid, in order to get up to those windows. It was lovely the way those Trollocs do. Man, they look funky though. All that computer generated stuff. And I know that some of it was just guys running in costumes and everything, but some of it, I swear, looked like, stop animation from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I mean, it just looked a little funky to me. It was still terrifying, but it still just looked funny to me. And again, I'll say, who the heck is getting some of Bezos' money there? Okay, so anyway, after that, Perrin is frustrated that he can't do anything. Why didn't he go to the wall with the men? Why didn't he do that? Loyal urges, on behalf of the Way of the Leaf, and he says that there's always an option other than fighting. They just need to ask. And when they do ask, well, Bob's your uncle. Here's a pick. Start digging. And Egwene and Nynaeve then do their duty, and they join Amalisa, and they hear and watch the battle at Tarwin's Gap happening. And then Lord Algamar, in defending Tarwin's Gap, wishes that he had, in fact, picked Daddy's armor that day.
Even though I wasn't invested in the character, seeing the Trollocs destroy the wall, of course, is emotional. You do care. It is spectacle that can pull you in. I personally, Perrin, who I want to try, I'm trying to be a bit on Team Perrin, but as I mentioned earlier, when we heard about the Ways of the Leaf, this idea of, there's always an alternative to fighting. When it's a frigging Fade or a Trolloc or whomever, you need to fight. I'm sorry. I don't think the Ways of the Leaf are going to work when your friends are getting decapitated or stabbed. And so, that drives me a bit crazy. Like, yes, I understand that, there are most problems should be solved non-violently. But when you're facing a monster as a Fade, hey, pick up a sword and fight. Showrunners, help me like Perrin, but Perrin doing nothing while Loyal is killed, while these people get decapitated. Perrin, do something. Throw leaves at them. Do anything.
Jump out the window.
Right. Like say, okay, you need me alive? Here, I'll use this knife to cut my own throat. Fight the demons.
Yes, okay.
If I'm on anything, I'm on team against, I'm on the team against the demons.
That's true. That is true. The Padan password, that's a double P, it does hack the gate guards. That's a double G. Uno tells Perrin and Loyal that they found the Horn of Valir, and it's used to call all the great warriors of the pattern to fight in the last battle. Only the dragon can use it. It is useless to them. And I'm sure that Perrin and Loyal are thinking, man, all that sweat for nothing. And Trollocs then come through Tarwin's Gap. Egwene thinks that Rand has failed because, that's the first thing you always think about Rand when something goes wrong, is that he's just no good for anything. Amalisa then tells them that she's going to link them up. Perrin sees Padan Fain just as they're getting to the horn. And then Amalisa is getting greedy with the shared one power, and Padan Fain gets the Fades to distract Uno and Yakota from the horn. And then Amalisa then pulls the whole He-Man Skeletor thing, the whole I have the power, unleashes a whole bunch of lightning bolts on the Trollocs, basically wiping them out.
Yes. Let me just pause in this awesomeness of the women coming together, the one power coming together through them, and them lighting hundreds of thousands of Trollocs up. Hell to the yeah. I loved it.
That is true, but as you know, Amalisa did not pass the test at the White Tower. So she's never felt power like this before. She doesn't have any idea of how to control it. And then her fellow channelers start dropping like flies as a result of her, coursing too much power through them. And then Perrin is looking for Padan Fain, but he finds him too late, as Padan Fain and the two Fades are taking out everyone. Amalisa cannot let go of this power that she's never had. So Nynaeve, in order to save Egwene, has to kind of try, I guess she's trying to siphon some of the power off of Egwene. That's kind of how I read it. I don't know. Did you read it like that, Bubba?
This was a mess. The one woman in the middle was, you're right, kind of could not disconnect from the power. Couldn't turn, there was no on-off switch. So she was burning up. The power was burning through her. Egwene was saved by Nynaeve, and then later, Egwene pays back the favor. So,
Yeah.
I just say magic stuff happened. But it
Magic.
was good. It was interesting. It was shocking that Nynaeve burned up, but of course we saw in the vision that she had to burn up. Egwene saving her. As I've always said, Egwene is the best.
Egwene is the best. Padan explains why he came to the True Rivers every Beltane. It wasn't just to sell lanterns. He explains that there are 5 focal points of the wheel, those crazy kids that we know, the double C's, and they're all Ta'veren. And Trollocs were sent to bring them to the Dark One, and we see flashes of Rand at the same time that this is happening at the Eye. We see Matt, who is going back to Tar Valon, I believe. That was the White Tower you could see there.
Yeah.
You see Egwene trying to use the one power to save Nynaeve.
Mm-hmm.
And then Padan says that Rand may be the dragon, but all 5 of them have a part to play. And Padan and the Fades leave. They just leave. And Perrin doesn't bother to check on Loyal. Instead, he goes straight to the balcony and looks for Egwene, who now has managed to bring Nynaeve back from the dead. Dun, dun, dun. For that part of the story, 2 things, Bubba. First of all, there aren't any stakes in this show anymore. Nynaeve has brought everybody back from the dead once. Now Egwene has brought somebody back from the dead. And that feels very cheap to me because I feel like in the books there are stakes. The other thing is that I loved the return of the bats. I loved how it was a bat that startled Perrin that was just hanging out there, hanging upside down on that archway. And that's the first bat we've seen since their dreams way back before they got to Shatter Logoth.
Again, Perrin's part of this story did not work for me in any way. So you're right. It is fun that the bat came back, but the Perrin story just didn't work for me. This does feel, it's so funny that you might have mentioned 2 towers a couple times. Well, as we know, that isn't the end of The Lord of the Rings. And so this might have felt like the 2 towers, but it definitely didn't feel like the end of the story either, even with all those Trollocs getting lit up. So I think it accomplished what, for me as a non-book reader, I needed was, okay, we are in a mess of trouble. How are we going to get out of this trouble? Okay, we're safe for now, but the trouble is still out there. So yeah. I'm down.
Well, how do you feel about everybody coming back to life multiple times?
It has happened, you're right, a couple of times. If I hadn't seen Loyal get killed, I would be very worried. But, that proves there are life and death stakes with Loyal getting got.
Okay.
Well, let me, as a non-book reader, predict where this is going to go.
Uh-oh.
It feels like our female users of the One Power have to go on their journey to become Aes Sedai. And so if I had to guess, Nynaeve and Egwene are off to the White Tower, where admittedly we saw that one shot of the actor formerly known as Matt was. So I assume that's what they're going to go. I've known that this Way of the Leaf is important to Perrin's story and probably the whole story. And so even though that doesn't work for me, it hasn't worked for me at all. I understand, okay, that's where this is going. So I would assume if Perrin as a man can't go to the White Tower, he's going to have to find his way. And so he probably, I assume, heads back to the 2 rivers, but he can't get very far before getting pulled into some new adventure. So that's my guess.
So let's move on to the Blight. Moiraine and Rand, they kind of stumble on to a breathless Borderlands boy. And that's a triple B. The Blight is a rot, according to Moiraine, coming from the Dark One's prison. Don't touch anything. Oh, except when you need to sit down or lean up against a tree, or, it seems to be okay.
This is one of those tricks, whereas as long as clothes come between you, like this bit of fabric will prevent you from touching the Blight, you're fine.
Okay, there you go. But it's okay to put your neck up against a tree. They take a rest, touching many things, and near the 7 towers of Malkier.
This didn't make any sense to me. The rest. Literally, they just left. They haven't like done a montage of them walking and walking and walking. It's like they've just left, and it's like, okay, guys, let's take a rest. These are two healthy people. They're not even walking up a hill. They need a
Yeah,
rest. I was like, what?
that was one of the subtle things that I felt like Rafe should have demonstrated more, and that is that the blight is very taxing. It's like using low oxygen.
Yeah, I assumed something like that, Matt, but they needed to get that across.
Yes, I agree.
For me, I'm like, wait, stop and take a rest. Wait, we're gonna go to sleep? What in the world?
He asks if it was hard for Moiraine to leave land behind, and she basically says, "Shut up," by tossing him some food. She also says or I think it's Rand who says that Malkier, Land's old home, looked like it had been in that state for 1,000 years, but it was only 40 years ago. If that makes sense, because Land was still a kid when it was taken over, obviously, and then he was brought to Faldara and raised by that wonderful family that raised him. But that I guess that's a pretty indication of how powerful this blight stuff is. Rand dreams that he wakes up from a dream, and then Moiraine gets a tonsillectomy from Ishmael, or I guess the Dark One. And arrows against this Ishmael only seem to make him prettier. Ishmael criticizes the tactics of Rand and Moiraine that they are using, and Rand draws his blade. And Ishmael is impressed by the blade, but he basically more or less tells Rand that Tam is not his daddy, and Rand stabs himself to wake up, which is what you always do in a dream, is you jump over the cliff because you know you'll wake up before you hit.
Rand had seen Inception, so.
Yes, he certainly has. Moiraine asks what he dreamt, just like she had asked him what he dreamt in his dream before getting her tonsillectomy. And he just says that he doesn't believe what this Ishmael said, all the "who's your daddy" stuff.
As I'm watching this, once again, I think this episode is strong, but I've always said that the 7 episodes were good, but needed to get some things across. And one of the things I had put in my notes were, what are Rand and Moiraine going to do? In Lord of the Rings, we knew the heroes were going to throw the ring into the lava. We're going to destroy this ring in Mount Doom, this volcano, the one place it can't be destroyed. Like, I knew that was the plan, even not having read the books. At the very beginning of this, I was typing in the show notes. I was like, what are they going to do? And then finally, Moiraine and Rand have a talk, and Moiraine says, I didn't need to train you because once your life is in danger, as the Dragon Reborn, the one power will come to you. And a part of me thought, boy, they should have explained this before. Because a couple podcasts ago, I was complaining, wait, you're going to go confront the Dark One now without any training? And this paid it off for me. So I was going to ask you, in the books, is it explained, hey, once your life's in danger, you'll have the one power that you need to destroy the Dark One? Because this just felt like finally somebody told me what the actual plan was. And I was glad it happened, but I wondered in the books if that revealing of the plan came sooner.
Bubba, this is hard for me to address. As far as people understanding how effectively they can channel things, it's generally in the books a very individual thing. Everybody kind of finds their own way to it, if they're going to channel at all. Whereas this seemed like some kind of blanket statement. Oh, if you're scared, one of my mentors just beat the crap out of me with the one power until I was so scared that I could use it too. Not exactly true in the books, anyway. The whole idea, though, of this sangreal that she ends up showing him, or Sa'angreal, guess I should say, it's something that can increase Rand's power 100-fold, and her plan, as we talked about, is kind of simple: just put the guy back where he was supposed to be, for another 3,000 years. But Rand also figures out that Moiraine thought that Egwene was the dragon, and he had thought that as well. And one of the things that I really liked about this, especially from a TV show perspective, is that Not only does it give Moiraine some fallibility, as if the whole rest of the episode doesn't, but it also, I think, was a nice shout out to people like you. And I know that you said that you might have been spoiled as to who the dragon was before we got the reveal, yet you were very heavy on the Egwene train. And I felt like that this whole statement about Egwene made between the two of them was kind of meta to TV only people saying, that's okay. It's okay that you thought that it was Egwene. We wanted you to think it was Egwene, just like these people did. So I felt like that you got a pat on the back there for your initial thoughts.
Right. Well, I think the show, especially in that very first episode, really sets Egwene up as the one. And that makes it a bit of a fun twist that she isn't the one. But then, once again, I wonder if Rand had enough going with his character. And I know we can go back and there'll be various points about, oh, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? But it really felt from episode 3 on that, we had a storyline of Rand and Matt, but it really felt like Matt's story with Rand as, attached to Matt's story about, okay, I'm with this cursed knife and these things are happening to me. And so, once again, I just wonder if they could have built up Rand even more in some of those episodes where he barely appears. So
I totally agree, Bubba. I feel like they tried so hard to misdirect about who the dragon is that they lost the power of the reveal when some breadcrumbs are left to give you evidence of that, right? Now, neither Moiraine nor Rand would make very good lumberjacks, Bubba, because they don't know the sound of a falling limb when they hear it. They're ready to go to war over a falling limb. And Moiraine, as we discussed before, won't teach Rand how to channel due to the whole madness thing. And she tells him that he will know instinctively through fear and adrenaline. I thought you used that. That sounds like a dark side thing to me, using fear. Then she tells a story about the AA, the Aes Sedai abuse, and she tells him that when his life's on the line, that he will channel, and he must do so through that Sa'angreal. Now, let me get a little nitpicky about this. When you're a Aes Sedai, you take 3 oaths, one of them being to never use the one power to hurt anybody else except in your own defense. Does it sound like Moiraine had a very good mentor? It sounds like that her mentor was a little messed up. Messed up mentor. That's a double M. Anything about well, we kind of already discussed that. Let's move on to Moiraine and Rand can then see Trollocs running towards Tarwin's Gap and Fall Dara. They hear him and then they see him. And Moiraine now, of course, says the only way that you can protect your friends, Rand, is if you defeat the Dark One, as if Rand needed any more motivation. And then they reach the Eye of the World, which is kind of shaped like a really deep eye socket, I suppose. And Rand tells Moiraine that she can go because, he doesn't want her to die, just like the prophecy says that, anyone that's with the Dark One or between the Dark One and the dragon will die. But she instead takes the lead. I thought that was very brave of her to say, what are you talking about? I'm here to sacrifice myself for you.
Well, this is her plan. She has to, she has to do it.
Yes. Yeah. And Lan is using Nynaeve's tell on Moiraine to track her, and then he sees his old kingdom. It was a very short scene, but I loved Daniel's acting in that. Rand and Moiraine reach the center of the eye, and Moiraine doesn't know its purpose any more than Rand does. But there is a symbol at the center, which looks like what do they call it? A yin yang.
Yeah.
On the center of the floor. And that ends up reminding him of his previous life, as we see little flashes of Luz and the Battle of the Dark One, or in this human form that we've see in the credits listed as Ishmael, which seems to spark something in Moiraine when he says that the Dark One is in a human form, or at least I thought it sparked something in her. One thing I want to say, Bubba, is, what was this place for? And I'm not sure if Moraine's answer about the records being purged was to tease a later reveal about the full power of this place, or if it was simply a meta statement by the show to say, hey, we just don't have time to address this stuff, so we don't know what it is. And so therefore I can't say anything more about it here, but I found it fascinating that was the explanation that Moiraine gave. Just as a book reader, I was fascinated by that.
To me, I think it's a beautiful visual design, and I think it makes perfect sense. And it looks like a prison. A prison is some hole in the ground, and of course it's a prison. That's where we're keeping who. Ishmael. Call me Ishmael.
Now, Rand, once he touches that seal, he's suddenly transported back to the farm, the old farm where him and Daddy are from. And Egwene is there, and she has a daughter named Joya, and they're getting ready for a Beltane, and all seems very peaceful. Meanwhile, on the outside, Moiraine is trying to wake Rand from this dream that he's been placed under, and then Ishmael appears before her as she tries to attack him, and then he does a little whiskey thingy with his ringy thingy, and what happens? She can't access her power anymore. Oh no, what's going to happen now? Back into the dreamland, Rand is still babysitting, but he starts to feel something is wrong. He gives Egwene a little test, and she passes it until Ishmael
that was
says,
shocking. That really shocked me. The fact she passed it, it was like, oh, okay, fun. I thought that her not passing would be the way he would know this was just a false promise.
oh no, see, they get you that, and then they don't even give you 2 seconds to celebrate before all of a sudden Ishmael is there freezing the world and saying, hey, buddy, how you doing, man? We can do some things here. And he tempts Rand with this perfect world that Rand can make. And in the real world, Ishmael is wondering whether Rand will choose the light or the dark. And Moiraine says, hey, nope, we're not going to go there. If he decides to choose the dark, well, I'm just going to take out, his thyroid. She's going to give him a thyroidectomy. If there's any indication that he's going to the dark side. Then Ishmael amps up the stakes in a dream world by threatening to kill this make-believe Egwene. But the Rand thinks, he's like, stop. And he's like, well, I thought you thought she wasn't real. And then when Rand asks how to make this dream world real, Ishmael's quite delighted by that. He tells Rand that if he wants a little girl to exist, he just has to focus his energy towards it, and she simply will be. He starts to channel, and on the outside, Ishmael starts to taunt Moiraine. And Rand's weave, you can see there's some darkness coming in on that as he's continuing to try to bring everything in. Then he turns and he says, basically, well, what about Egwene? And he focuses all of his power into that Sa'angreal that Moiraine had gave him, and he blows the Dark One away, or Ishmael away, or whatever we're calling him right now. And Moiraine, he then wakes up, and Moiraine asks him what happened, and he says, mission accomplished. So Moiraine also tells him that they can't go back to Fal Dara yet, which I wasn't sure. Was there a reason for that? I couldn't catch the reason on that, why she said they couldn't go back to Fal Dara yet. But then Rand just says, hey, did my bit. Get away from me. I'm going away. He wants to go mad all by himself because she saw what happened to him. In fact, she did not. If she can't wield the one power, she probably can't see it either. So there you go. She has no idea that the taint was getting to him, but he tells her so that she can be sure to destroy him later, I'm sure. And they, because that's what Rand deserves. And then he just ups and leaves. How rude.
He saw Logain, did he not? He saw Logain, and he saw a person he thought looked mad. He was told that if men touch the one power, this is what's going to become me. He doesn't want the person he loves to see him like that, so he pieces out. He becomes a hero. Thank you, Rand, for doing that. I would say
tail and runs, Bubba.
He does not run. He prevents his loved one seeing him go nutty. I think that one thing that's interesting is that symbol there, what we're calling the yin yang symbol. It features dark and light. And I'm pretty sure that when Rand was zapping away the Dark One, he was using both dark and light powers. And so I would think, oh, this is the good thing. But that, once again, I think I've mentioned this already, that smile that evil Dark One gives as he zaps out of existence. So good. So good. Very exciting. I said on the last podcast that I thought it would be fun to watch a series where the Dark One was defeated, and then to see human beings with our natural hatreds and things suddenly start fighting amongst ourselves and not having someone to blame like the Dark One. But this also works. This also works where Rand and Moiraine and everybody's plan just goes straight to hell. So I think it's good.
I think that Rand just turned tail and ran.
No, brother.
And
listeners, write and prove that you're on my side on this one.
Yes, tweet at BusBlockbuster on Twitter and tell me that I'm wrong. I will entertain being wrong, even though I know I'm not. Land finds Moiraine, and he asks about Rand, and she says, he gone. And she also tells him that she can't unmask their bond because she's lost her powers. And she has a little crying spell there. Rand takes one last look at the eye from a distance and heads off. And then Moiraine shows Lan that during Rand and Ishmael's face-off, Ciaran, I can't say that word. It's Heartstone, ladies and gentlemen. Heartstone has been broken during the course of their battle. And that's not supposed to be possible, according to Lan or Moiraine. And somehow they come to the magic conclusion that because this happened, this wasn't the last battle, but just the first. I mean, that's because that's what Broken Heartstone tells me every single time.
We tried, we failed.
It's like, oh, try again. Meanwhile, on the far western shore, remember when back in, what was that, episode 5 during the Aes Sedai, the blue bath, the double B, that her superior was talking about ships or a threat in the west or something like that.
Yeah, I do not remember that at all, but I can tell that's what this was setting up.
Yes. So Moya or whatever her name was telling Moiraine about this, and Bubba, you had specifically asked me a question if we should care about this. Well, evidently we should, because this is a group of really bad people who have a fierce hatred for little girls. So much so that they'll unleash a whole tidal wave on one single little girl. And that's the scene and the season. I just keep thinking, if they're using that much wind power and they're building up that much water, wouldn't their ships run aground? Were they far enough away from the shore that their ships wouldn't run aground? That was my big concern. No, these people are called the Shanchan. And they are people who can channel also. They do not use the same rules that the Aes Sedai use. They will use their one power as a weapon of war anytime they feel like it, especially when they're waging war against one little girl. Were you surprised by this? Does it make you excited for what this might mean for the story? Or is it too much coming at everybody too fast when we're not even sure if we've defeated the Dark One or not yet?
Well, let me say, I don't think the Dark One is defeated. I don't think this was the final battle. I do think that this is an exciting issue because obviously these are women on these boats using the one power, seemingly in an act of war, but without any knowledge of where it could really be what it could really be setting up. I want to point out that I went in before this episode, I decided to look up a map of the world because I couldn't understand where anything was. So I looked up a map. I said, Wheel of Time map. And I looked at this thing and I because there's so many books, I looked at the map. And at first, the only place I found was Tar Valon. Everything else was like, well, I've never heard of that. But then looking around, I found Tear and I found the two rivers. And then I was like, what's going on? Finally, I looked, it didn't lay out the way I thought it would have been based on the geography that I've seen. that this desert is in the northeast corner of the map, or what I assume is the northeast corner. That's where the desert is, in the farthest northeast corner. But then I found it, and it surprised me where everything was. So the show has done a lot of things good. I think it has made me care about some of the characters. It has made me fascinated with the world. But as maybe some of the internal politics, like even going back to Logain taking over that kingdom and making the king one of his followers or whatever, I'm not sure the show has done a great job about that. But again, I'm ready for season 2. And if we have more antagonists, that's good. My possibly favorite antagonists of series 1 were the White Cloaks. So if we have more, I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. Excellent. And what's worse than me giving a recap? It's playing What's Worse.
Oh, no.
What's worse?
So, Bubba, do you have a question for me? A What's Worse question for me?
Okay. What is worse? Trying to defeat the Dark One and possibly releasing him from his prison chamber at the Eye of the World, or doing nothing and your name is Perrin? What's worse? So you were trying to defeat the Dark One, and turned out you didn't. It may have made him more powerful. So you were trying to do the right thing, but screwed up everything royally. Or the guy who didn't try to do anything, but hey, he's cool like a leaf. What's worse?
Yeah, well, the truth of the matter is because he didn't do anything, he may have done something worse. He gave the Horn of Valor to the enemy.
Oh,
and
bad
this
move, dude.
This is not a good move, because who knows what kind of horrible music they're going to play on that trumpet or horn or whatever it is. I mean, it could be free jazz for all you know.
Oh,
and
no.
That could be absolutely awful. So I'm going to say that Perrin doing nothing is worse, Boba.
Well, I think sometimes doing nothing is the bravest thing. And I forget what television or movie that's from. And so I'm going to, for the moment, forgive all my Perrin hate and say, Rand, you, by trying to do the right thing and screwing everything up, Rand, you're the worst.
Wow. I finally got Bubba to admit that Rand is the worst. This is so great. I tricked you. Oh, it's so great. Oh, wonderful. Folks, we're going to put that on the poll. You can just prove me wrong, or prove or make Bubba feel silly and two-faced and hypocritical for winning the fact that Rand was worse in this particular episode. But yeah, so we'll do that. But my question to you, Bubba, is this: what's worse? Not making things clear enough for your audience to know what's in the show, or deciding you need to clarify things in an interview about your show?
Well, Matt, I don't want to give it away. I don't want to give away the ghost to our wonderful, loyal listeners. But I too looked at some of these interviews with the showrunner, Rafe, and I found out the dreadful secret about our boy Loyal. And when I found out that was the truth, I was like, really? And so I think that is the worst. The fact that things may not be as they seem, that may be the worst.
Okay. See, that's a very good argument. So you're saying that having to do the interview is worse.
Yes.
I'm just saying that you don't gotta go to the extra effort if you just get it right the first time in the show.
No.
But
that's
folks,
too hard. Come on.
That's getting it right in the show so that everybody understands exactly what's going on. Folks, we'll put that on the poll at Bust Blockbuster on Twitter. Be sure to vote for that poll. Speaking of which, Bubba, I put out several polls. I only kept one "What's Worse" question from last week's podcast episode because mine was, as you pointed out, was basically a copy of yours. And so I cut mine out. But
okay,
we did get an answer to your "What's Worse" question.
Oh, wow. Thank you, listeners.
The listeners did vote. What's worse, declaring yourself the Dragon Reborn, or skipping the trip altogether?
Man, listeners, I hope you really came through with my Matt the Brat hate. Let's hear it.
Yes. Skipping the trip. 72.7%. That was out of
Wow.
1,100 votes on the 100 Twitter.
Great. Wow.
So, yeah, that's almost like 8 out of 11 of you voted for skipping the trip. Now, on to some other polls that I threw up because I didn't have any other what's worse question to put up. How about this one? Do
Let's
we
hear it.
call them? Actually, Bubba, I think you asked this question in the podcast. Do we call them Nylan or Lanive in terms of our
Ooh.
shipping name for them?
Yeah.
Overwhelmingly, our biggest vote getter this week, 1,400 votes on the 100 Twitter, 78.6% of you said Lanive. So
Oh, wow.
I was wrong. I wanted to call him Nylan. Lanive. I have been corrected once again. That happens often in these polls. Let's see. Another poll. Everyone needs a good night's sleep when you're preparing to die the next day. True or false?
Yeah.
Overwhelmingly, out of 800 votes on the 100 Twitter, 87.5% of you said yes. Everyone does need a good night's sleep when they are when they're preparing to die the next day. I say no. I say, live your life to the last moment. But that's just me. More Matt is the coal in your holiday stocking.
Oh,
Yes
no.
or no? 1,100 votes. 72.7% of you said that yes. More of me and no catfish was definitely the coal in your stocking for
Okay.
the holiday season.
I can't trust these polls ever again if that's the result.
See, the thing is what they don't realize is I've done something good for them. They're going to need that coal to stay warm this winter. So they've actually it's an endorsement of me. That's the way I see it, for sure. That's definitely the way I see it. Are there any other polls here? I think that's it.
Well, how about this? I want to know from our listeners, if you read the book, how do you feel? Are you slightly disappointed like Double M Matt Murdock is? Or are you excited as a book reader because you see this army coming? You're excited for where we're going to go in season 2. If you're a non-book reader, I want to know if you're like me, like, ooh, wow, this season was choppy, but it really seems fascinating. I can't wait for season 2. If you're a non-book reader, maybe you're the other way and you're thinking, man, I'm going to bow out. I'll go watch something like The Witcher. Ugh.
Or Yellow Jackets.
Or Yellow Jackets, right. Let me know. I want to know. Please write to us and tell us. What do you think, Matt? Have you been online? What are people's reactions so far to this episode?
I've seen mixed reactions from book readers. I've seen mostly positive reactions from non-book readers. But
good.
My sample size is quite small. The number of people that I'm following on Twitter that are watching the show does not give me a big enough sample size to speak for the entire fandom population. And so we will put this question of Bubba's up on the poll. We want you to vote. We need at least 1,400 votes on the 100 Twitter for us to consider this a good sample size. So get out there on @BustBlockbuster on Twitter find those polls and vote on them. Had a little bit of feedback also from our last podcast, Bubba. Priscilla TV says, "Dear podcasters, help me with this. Magdalena Sitova, Magdalena Sitova, the woman who played Rand's mother, is actually a stunt woman. This I knew. Could she be put up for a guest star Emmy nomination? I mean, she acted. Nobody can convince me otherwise." Do you think the fact that the baby was CGI could hurt her chances? Like the dear people that vote for Emmys would feel she actually did not suffer because she gave birth through CGI manipulation. Something to think about. Also, I agree with Double M's arch nemesis. Rand was, once again, a selfish brat demanding to be born in the middle of a battlefield. Unforgivable. I agree with that. I also think it's just a murderer. He's a murderer. The infant murderer. His first breath consisted of a crime. Catfish.
You know what? I have been trying to defend Rand, but if Priscilla TV wants me to hop onto the other side, I will. I'll do anything for Priscilla. So anything for our listeners. I'm with her.
All right. Excellent. Catfish, by the way, had to make his known presence on this podcast regardless by saying in a response to Priscilla, anybody who is actually a member of the Television Academy can submit someone, usually I'm guessing themselves, for an Emmy during the submission period. I know this because I actually did it for myself one time.
What?
Yeah. So he also put some other little stipulations, like she'd have to be, I guess, a SAG member. No, not SAG, but she'd have to be a member of the Television Academy in order to be able to submit herself. Things like, yeah. There are certain qualifications that we don't know if Magdalena qualifies for. But I mean, I thought she did a great job. I thought she was the best part of that whole episode for me. But then again, I'm not a Rand fan, and I don't like CW stuff in my fantasy. But that's just me.
Well, let me ask you this. Where are we in filming of season 2? Have they started yet? How long are we going to have to wait for another season?
That's a good question as far as how long we have to wait. I think we're going to have to wait and see how this new wave of the pandemic shakes out to see if anything gets delayed or not. They are in production now for season 2. Actually, they have been for some time. So I don't know how close they are to wrapping up the filming. Hopefully they got a good portion of it done this last year when the pandemic of 2021 was a little bit diminished by the vaccines and everything. And they will be able to get this thing cranked out within a year, I would guess. Right. I'm guessing we're not going to see it in 2022. Maybe spring of 23.
That'd be good.
Yeah, that would be very good for me. I guess it's time to move on to our musical analysis section. We call that Bustin' Balfe. That's a double B. And because Rafe seemed to want to make a big deal out of the appearance of these Shan people at the end of the episode, I thought I'd take a look at the theme that Lorne did for it.
All right. So obviously they wanted us to talk about the end of this particular episode. So why not talk about the music at the end of this particular episode as what do they call, the Shan are creating a tidal wave to bury a little girl. They're declaring war on a little girl. Anyway, what does this theme do and why is it menacing? Let me play it for you real quick. So why is this theme menacing? What about it helps accentuate the fact that these people are unleashing a tidal wave on a little girl? There's several things that are involved in this, and they include all 4 of the aspects that I like to talk about when I talk about good film scoring. Lorne Balfe is very good at using all 4 facets. But one is simply the timbre of those voices in that main part that we hear singing. They're kind of guttural. They're very harsh. And that, of course, exemplifies a type of aggression, and that makes it very uncomfortable. We see these channelers using the power not to help anybody, not following any of the rules of the Aes Sedai, but simply to create havoc, to create war. The melodic shape is also very important in terms of it tells us what the mission of these people are, in a way. This melody starts with its first note being much higher than its last note, at least in this first initial phrase. And it continually starts to get lower and lower. It does sometimes jump back up, which gives it a volatility as well, meaning that you don't know what you're going to get from these people. Again, great for setting up whatever they're going to do with them in the next season
we won't know what to expect them to do. But because the shape continually ends up going down by the end of it, that tells us that it's not an uplifting mission that these people have. There's also the rhythm that's more in the percussion. I demonstrated it with the bass note, more or less, with my left hand when I did it. But the rhythm with those quick diddle-a-dot, diddle-a-dots give the urgency, the fact that these people are definitely on something. But the tempo is also plotting, meaning that it's methodical. These are good warriors who've made a plan in order to destroy whatever they've come to destroy. And the fast rhythms within there also help elevate our heartbeat and make it more exciting for us, and not necessarily in a good way. But the most important aspect of this particular melody that actually makes it menacing is something that you don't really even pick up on consciously, but it is something that happens subconsciously. It's based on the half-whole scale, this melody is. And again, I often throw out terms that I don't expect you to remember or understand, but the half-whole scale is unique in the fact that it is a symmetrical scale. The half whole and the whole half scale both end up with 8 notes, and most notes in a scale total 7, which is not symmetrical. And as you know, when it comes to harmony, as I've spoke about this before, when it comes to harmony, we don't like symmetry. Now, we do in our beats. We like our beats to be symmetrical, but we don't like symmetry in our harmony. And so having something that comes out to a total of 8 and is perfectly splittable in many multiple ways is something that drives us a little crazy as humans for whatever reason. It's just math, and we humans basically work in a mathematical way when we're working that out in our subconscious. What it also does is it creates an ability to put 2 notes together that make it sound minor, which is sad or angry, or you can put 2 notes together within the scale and make it sound major, which is lighter or happier usually. But because both notes are present in this particular scale, when you start on particular notes, it doesn't allow you to decide. And that ambiguity, that volatility also creates a menacing feeling because you don't know how to resolve this. I mean, you hear these notes against what we feel like is the tonic home, but we hear both of those notes being played within this melody. And so that gives an ambiguity to it, and it gives a volatility to it. And again, it's the unpredictable nature of who these people are. What are they doing? Why? The other thing that's tricky, and this is really on the subconscious level, is that a half whole scale, because it is symmetrical, if you take every other note within that scale and just build chords with them, like the first note, the third note, and the fifth note, and just continually go up the scale, you get nothing but diminished chords. And diminished chords, of course, make us feel very uncomfortable because they are symmetrical in themselves and they can resolve just about anywhere. And those diminished chords are what really make us feel uneasy. They're the ones that have the most tension for us as humans when we hear them played. Again, because there's an ambiguity as to how they can resolve, and there's no resolution within them because they're symmetrical. And that's all I've got this time around. Let's get back to closing this puppy up. Okay, Bubba, we have come to the end of a season of the Wheel of Time. I'm glad that you were excited by it enough to maybe want to stick around and talk about it the next time we do. As for me, I am going to have a book reader podcast for my fellow book readers at a later date. But we want to remind you that if you are currently getting this podcast as we release them, Book of Boba Fett is coming very, very soon. And Bubba and Catfish, your two favorite of your three Double P podcasters, will be podcasting about the show on a podcast called Parsec Passion. Please subscribe there. If you're into Star Wars at all, you will love their takes on them. Everything that they do in terms of the way they come up with segments and the way they discuss things simply from a Star Wars fan's perspective. I love listening to them. And I also analyze Ludwig's score for the stuff. So Bubba hasn't asked me to do it for Book of Boba Fett yet, but I'm assuming that I'm just going to send him something and then I'll find out.
Yeah, you're assigned, Matt. There's no asking anymore. It's your job.
It's my job now. It's just assumed. It's no longer assigned. It's assumed that I will be giving you musical analysis on that podcast as well. But you won't have to hear me for more than 7 minutes, which is a plus for you listeners. So come back and listen to Bubba and Catfish. Again, that podcast is called Parsec Passion. Find it wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to it right away. Send them a screenshot of you being subscribed there. They usually do contests like that as well. The idea is that we just want you to be part of all of our Double P family, and we're covering great things like His Dark Materials, again, Book of Boba Fett, and all kinds of Babylon Berlin will be returning in 2022. Bubba and Catfish and I get together and have a couple yucks about that. The Last Kingdom will be returning in 2022. We'll get together and have a couple of yucks about that. And stay tuned to this podcast as well. Even though the Wheel of Time is over, I am planning on doing the Lord of the Rings next year when it comes out. And we'll be doing some MCU stuff in the in-between as well as some fun podcasts, hopefully. And don't forget also, probably, Bubba, is the Joffrey of podcast returning to cover House of the Dragon?
Can you believe it? I can't believe it either.
They are coming back. With that, we're going to say adios for now. And I will have a feedback podcast. I want to hear from you at Blockbuster on Twitter, or you can tweet to at the word double the letters PHQ, or you can just simply leave comments on the YouTube pages as well at youtube.com/c/double P media. See ya.
Let catfish comments be forgot. We'll be back for season 2. We thank you for listening a lot. We can't do this without you. Let catfish comments be forgot. We will still watch this show. And thanks again for subscribing, friends. You have helped our podcast grow.
Happy New Year.